Okay, it's a little bit after 9. I'm going to move on with functions. I'm having a feeling that there's going to be some people who are very confused. We have 1 viewer online and 5 in class. That's 6 of 22. So I'm going to review and remind everybody that on your day where you're not at school, it is not a day off. You still have to do work. Please make sure you're still doing that work, or you're going to be in a position where you're going to be very, very confused. Okay, going into lesson 16, functions. This is the last lesson of the intro to coding with Python. Again, I got a video there. What we're working on when we look at functions is kind of a program within a program. If you have a series of commands that are going to be carried out, and you're going to want to use those commands over and over again, rather than retyping all those commands each time you want to use them, you just create them and put them into a function, name your function, and then just call your function, and it does that. It carries out all of those actions on its own without you having to type out all the lines. Now, all my examples are going to be relatively short, but when you look at my function examples, think about it in terms of if they were 10 or 15 lines of code. Rather than having to run 10 or 15 lines of code every time, you just run your function and it carries on in the background. Okay? So there are 4 types of functions that we can use. First of all, we can not assign value and not return a value. All right? So we instantiate a function with def. Okay? That's defining a function. And we're going to create a function called printPy. Now, we're not assigning a value, so nothing goes into the parameters here. And we're not returning a value, so all we're going to do is have it print. So the entire purpose of this function is to print pi each time. And this is where I'm talking about my examples are too small for it to make sense. When I type print pi, it's going to print 3.14159. And then one of you might say, well, why wouldn't I just type 3.14159? Well, obviously just typing this is faster than, or is as fast as typing out this function or calling the function. But if this was multiple lines of code, then it would end up being something that's faster. So when we come in here, we're going to create our function called printPy. All right, and now when I run it, nothing happens because this print function is within the function itself. Okay, so this print command, is within the function itself. So even when I run my program, I don't get anything because I haven't called the function yet. All right, so on a lower line, if I call the function and I say print pi, I don't have to put anything in the parameters because there is nothing assigned. It carries out the actions of that function. It prints 3.14159. All right? And we printed it as a string, not a number. That's the simplest function that you can use. It doesn't return a value, and you're not assigning it a value. All right? Very, very easy. That's something that you would use for reoccurring prompts or titles in your program. Okay, the second type of function is you assign a value, but you're not going to return any value. So the code needed for that is def print double, and then we assign a value of x. All right, so anytime somebody calls this function, they are going to have to put a value in for x. So we're assigning that value there. So when we do that on this part, we're going to call it def print double. And then we're going to say, oops, I didn't assign the value. Okay, so I create my function and I say, call it print double. I assign it a value of x, and then I say, anytime this function gets called, I want you to times whatever the value assigned is by 2. So then when I call my function, I say print double 5, it's going to times 5 by 2. And I get 10. If you try and call that function without, you get an error. Because that function knows that it needs a parameter in order to function. In order to work properly, it needs a parameter put inside. Okay, so whatever it is, as long as you put a parameter in there, it's going to carry out whatever its required function is. All right, so that was a function that has a value, but is not returning a value. This one, I can't, honestly, I'm not experienced enough with programming to understand when you would ever use this. You don't assign a value, but you return one. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to figure it out, but I have to show you the option of it. So we get def get pi. We're not assigning a value, and we're just returning 3.14159. All right, that's all we're doing. We're just returning that number. And to return a number, it means it's similar to broadcast in Scratch, where you're broadcasting a message and something else is looking for that message. And when it sees that message, it's going to do something, but it has to see the message first. So that's kind of what return means. So if we create that one, we called it def get pi. We're not returning a value, and we want it to, we're not assigning a value, and we want it to return 3.14159. Now, in order to actually use it, we have to assign it to something. So I create another variable called x, and I say x equals the function get pi. It's okay, I'll be fine. Get pi. Okay, so now I say, I created my function, I said get pi, what I want you to do is return this number. So then here I say x equals get pi. That should not be there. Oh, you're a moron, Baron. Okay, so now I have assigned the variable x to my function of get pi. So now the value of x is going to be 3.14159. Because like I said before, I'm going to return this, and this return is going to be kind of floating in the air in my program until I tell something to go find that thing that was returned. So I'm telling x, hey, go see what you can find with this function get pi. But when I run it, I still don't get any output. Because this is just returned. I've now assigned the two together. So the value of x is 3.14159 when I run the program, but I don't have any output. So I have to say print x. Now when I run it, I get my output. Like I said, this is important to understand so you can understand what a return is. But I can't find a time where this would be faster than just creating a variable with a specific value. All right? Please stop me if it's confusing or you want me to explain more. The fourth function, assigning a value and returning the value. So for this function, we're going to assign it a value, which will be a variable, and we are returning a value, which will be assigned within that function. So we create a variable called def get double. We put our assigned variable inside the parameters, and then we return y times 2. Now we have to create a new variable and assign its value to the get double function. So we print that out and we create our new variable and we say a is equal to get double but now we get to put what we want in there. It's not just a predetermined number. We can put something in there that's going to carry out an operation. And if you change y times 2 to be the quadratic equation or something, well, now it's valuable, because now we can put our own parameter into this equation. Like I said, pretend this is a bigger equation. Pretend it's not just, basically 1 plus 1. Pretend it's something that's much more difficult to understand. Then, now you have control over that function, and it's unlike the previous one where it's just an assigned number. Now it's an assigned operation. So anytime you want to carry out this operation, you just call it, put the parameter in, and print it. And away you go. So let's put that one in. Def get double. Let's call it X. And then we will return Y times. Why am I getting an error? Okay, sorry, give me 1 sec. Oh, I think it's giving me an error just because I don't have anything happening with that. So if I say A equals get double, assign it as a 4. Okay, if somebody sees what my error is. Oh, yeah, you got it. Thank you. Okay, perfect. I'm using different variables in here, and then when I use my sample one here, so that's why. Also, I'm stupid sometimes. Okay, so I create my function called getDouble. I assign the value of x, and then I say, whatever you do, return x times 2. So now, when I run this program, my function getDouble broadcasts out to the world, hey, x times 2. Now I use this variable to grab it, and I say, hey, go and look and see what's happening with that return number, see what's there. And while you're doing that, use this number as the parameters for that function that's occurring over there. So it finds this function and it says, oh, okay, so what am I doing here? Oh, I'm going to take my number 4 and put it in as x, so I got to go 4 times 2. And, okay, good, the answer is 8. Now I print the value of 8 because that function runs and throws the result into A. When I print A, I get 8. And again, if you change this something more complicated, maybe something that takes several lines to explain, you now have an easy way to carry out a function based on parameters you can give it. Okay, whatever your parameters are. And those will run over and over and over again with a simple call of that function. All right? It's not just operations that can occur inside of functions either. You can have multiple commands within your function to make it work. So I'm going to show you an example of that right now. So if we want to use our function to create something that's going to check if a number is odd or even. So we're going to use def get greatest. And we need two numbers in there. So we're going to say A and B. So we've created a function that is going to assign a value and return a value. So now we're going to use an if statement, and we say if A is greater than B, then we want it to return true, else return false. So now we have a function that is going to check two numbers to see which one is bigger. All right, so if I use, if I call my variable by creating another one, so I say test1 equals get greatest, and I say 20 and 55. And then I say print test 1. All right, so now I've created my function that has multiple command lines. It even has an if statement inside of it. Now you could put a loop inside that function. You could put nested if statements inside that function. Whatever you have, you can throw it in there. So I create it and I say, hey, when you run this function, you're going to be getting two parameters. Anytime this function is called, they're going to throw two numbers at you. All right, they're going to be in this order. The first number you get is going to be A. The second number you get is going to be B. So then when I call get greatest, I say A is 20, 55 is B. So when I run it, it's going to tell me which of these is greater through a true or false response. So the question is A greater than B? When I run it, I get my answer of false. No, it's not. So when I change it to 56 and I run it again, it says true. It's also going to say false if I do this, because it's the same, it's not greater than. But you can change these numbers to anything you want them to be, and it will run through this test over and over and over again. So if there's 8 spots in your program where the computer needs to determine which number is bigger, you can use a function to do that. And I understand that this would have made rock, paper, scissors maybe a little bit easier to make, but it's introductory. So now you know how to do it. Maybe you could make that program a little bit easier. The second example I want to give you is, I'm going to do it a little bit backwards to start, and then I'll give you a better way to do it after. So if I'm going to create a function called isEven, so I say if D modulus 2 equals 0, then return true, else return false. Okay, so if you remember modulus, I talked about it in one of the first lessons in Python. Modulus is not division. It carries out a division operation, but what it looks for is what's left over. So if we're looking for whether or not a number is even or odd, any number that's divisible by 2 is an even number. Any number that is not divisible by 2 is an odd number. So now we're creating a function that's going to test that. So this function is going to take whatever number is used and check it, divide it by 2. If there's a remainder, then it'll return false. If there's no remainder, it'll return true. But we have to call it within a another command, which is kind of the backwards part. So I say if even 44 equals true, print even, else print odd. So now when I run this, it says even. Okay, and it goes through that whole gambit to come up with that answer. So rather than it returning true, it's actually going to tell the user, hey, this number's even. And we can change that, and it's going to tell the computer, it's going to tell the user, hey, that one's odd. All right? Now this is a lot of work. It's probably the most logical way to do it so that you can use it over and over again. But you can also just say, rather than messing with the return, you can just say it from here. Print even, else print and then I'm going to call okay, so this is a little bit simpler. It's a little bit more functional. It doesn't leave you open to as much, being able to do as much with the function because it's just going to carry this out over and over again. But instead of using the return value, you're going to just put the if statement with the print statements. And, sorry, those don't look like they're lining up. Anyway, you put the if statement with the print statements all into the function, and now no matter what number you do, it's going to tell you whether it's even or odd. Okay, over. That's weird. Okay, regardless, it was working before, so I'm going to leave it for now, as I might have to refresh that page to get it to work. Any questions about functions? Okay, from here we move on to the last assignment of the module. Functions practice. For this assignment, I would like you to create a program that includes 4 functions. It can't just be a random collection of functions, but a program with an overall purpose. So I don't want just 4 random different functions in the program, and I don't care how simple or advanced the functions are. Just throw 4 of them together that look like they relate. They all do something intentional and maybe play off of each other a little bit too. 4 functions. And a program that can solve a simple problem, something that you need to do, an odd even checker, a multiplier, something like that. Okay? Comments all the way through as you go. From there, we go to quiz 8. Really, that function assignment shouldn't take much more than an hour. There's 2 hours left in this class still. So I'm going to make the due date for assignment 18 to be today, and on Monday we'll move on to computing in society, which is a relatively short module. Any questions? If people are struggling with that data list assignment, please let me know. I can give you one more little hint. I'm not going to give you the exact answer because the whole assignment is actually 1 line of code. So I won't give you the whole line of code, but if you are really, really struggling with that data list and you've given it a realistic shot, please let me know and I can give you one more hint. That is